What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't what you think it is? What if it's not your lack of experience or connections or even money, but the simple act of not starting? I spent years letting ideas build up in my mind like a dam about to burst. I had visions of businesses I wanted to create, projects I wanted to launch, changes I wanted to make in the world. But instead of taking that first step, I'd spend hours researching, planning, and dreaming. Or just forgetting about it all and watching Netflix, without ever actually doing anything about it. Well, here's what I didn't realize at the time. By not taking action, I wasn't just standing still, I was actually moving backward. So every time I talked myself out of starting, every time I convinced myself that I needed to learn more first, every time I told myself someday, I was actively building a belief that I wasn't the type of person who takes action, that my ideas weren't worth pursuing, that I wasn't ready. And the cruel irony? The longer I waited, the bigger and more overwhelming all of these ideas became in my mind. So they ended up turning from exciting possibilities into these looming mountains of uncertainty. I'd lie awake at night thinking about all the pieces I needed to figure out, all the things that could go wrong, all the reasons why now wasn't the right time. And then one day, almost by accident, I did something that changed everything. I started writing my ideas down. And not in a pretty organized way, just messy notes on paper, getting it out of my brain. And something fascinating happened. Those big, scary, overwhelming ideas suddenly felt manageable. Breaking them down into smaller pieces made them real, tangible, and most importantly, actionable. And that's when I realized something important. I didn't need to have it all figured out. I just needed to know my next step or two. And here's the magic. By taking those first small steps, the path ahead started to reveal itself. It's like driving at night. Your headlights only show you the next 200 feet, but you can make the whole journey that way. And the part I never expected was how different progress would feel, even if it was slow, tiny progress at first. There's this incredible shift that happens in your mind when you move from someone who has ideas to someone who acts on ideas. That feeling of forward momentum, no matter how small, creates a kind of energy that attracts opportunities and clarity and confidence. So this episode is a little bit different. While I love diving deep into spirituality and mindset work, sometimes what we really need is just a practical roadmap for turning our dreams into reality. Because at the end of the day, all the inner work in the world won't matter if we don't know how to take that first step. So today we're talking to someone who understands this journey intimately. Daryl Schwartz isn't just an entrepreneur. He's a serial entrepreneur who's turned multiple ideas into reality, including his latest venture, Good Bar. And what makes his story particularly valuable is that it wasn't always smooth. He's dealt with timing issues and pivots and those moments where you have to decide whether to keep pushing or let go. So in this episode, you'll learn how to recognize which of your ideas are worth pursuing and when timing is right. The practical first steps to move from idea to action, even if you're starting from zero. And why failing might be exactly what you need to succeed, and how to use setbacks as stepping stones. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything. Work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out. But that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
Take a chance and move forward even if you don't know. Do what you can. Take the steps, even if you don't know what they are. There are small steps that you can move towards, what you think you want to build, and then be flexible that might change over time. So don't get hung up on how it has to look right now, today, as if it were 5 or 10 years down the road. Take a step forward to do something, and then be open to see how it develops as you get inputs, as the universe acts on it, as you get feedback, and then just be flexible. Be very, very flexible. I love the idea of be like water, right? So be like water and adjust as all those inputs present themselves, but just continue to move forward.
Turn up your frequency with MindLove. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
Welcome to the show, Daryl.
All right. Thanks for having me.
So I came across your company, Good Bar, and I'm just so intrigued and inspired because I gave up alcohol a few years ago. And so I still, though, have this connection to like the party lifestyle because I was such a huge party girl for so long. And so I love a good experience. And when I came across Good Bar, this non-alcoholic bar that caters parties, I was just so excited. What was your original spark of inspiration for Good Bar?
Yeah, so Good Bar was a pre-COVID project for us. So probably 2018, I had kind of hit a wall with drinking. So I had, in 2013, had gone through a divorce, had gone through, kind of a messy relationship after that, and didn't necessarily respond the best way through all that, which ended up me being, out and partying and doing a lot of things I probably regret. And kind of hit a wall. And for me, it was like, hey, listen, I don't want to drink anymore, but I really want to like continue to be able to go out. And so as I looked for, places and opportunities to be able to continue to socialize without alcohol, basically it was like non-existent. So I was like, I guess I got to build this. And so that kind of started us on our journey towards coming up with this idea of opening these like functional non-alcoholic bars. And at that time, none of the non-alcoholic market existed. So we were literally having to like formulate spirits to be able to serve at the bar and drinks and non-alcoholic products. And so we spent basically 2018, 19, and the early part of 2020, like formulating from a product development standpoint, because it was a cool idea to have a bar, like a non-alcoholic bar. There just wasn't anything to serve. And at that point, when we were ready to kind of like go out and find a location, that's when COVID hit, and we completely shut the project down for 3 years.
When you're following your inspiration, how do you know that it's meant for you versus something that you might be chasing?
Meaning like chasing an opportunity, or like this is something that really feeds my soul.
Yeah, both.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a tendency to like be like heart led. And I've never been one that's pursued any sort of project because, I felt like there was a financial motivation or something for me to go do it. I've had to do things out of necessity, financially. Like I have a large family, 5 kids, so there were periods of times where, and I've started businesses before when I was a lot younger, like an organic meal delivery company in 2004, because, I had a passion for organics and food, and I wanted people to be able to access better food and have, more options to eat better. And so that was really led that way. So I think it's just sort of like inherent in who I am as an individual, which is, I've been sort of like, I believe in a better future and I believe in a better vision. And the things that I do, I would hope are things that pursue that. So I think it's just kind of who I am in my nature. And to be honest, like there are other motivations don't mean anything to me. So like if they're surface level motivations or they don't have a deeper meaning or purpose behind them, then they just don't resonate with me.
I speak to a lot of people where the idea of starting a business is so far out of reach. And then I speak to other people that are like, oh yeah, when I was 18, I started a business and then I started my next one. It sounds like you've created more than one business. So what do you think allowed your mindset to include that as a possibility? What did you see growing up? What was that first business spark like? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember being a kid. I was probably 12, 11, 12. And I remember being in my garage and I had a bunch of wood and I was like, oh, I can make and build like these little toy things and I can sell them to people. And there was something inside of me that just felt like, and I can remember it, like it felt very um, like this is something that I wanted to pursue, and like who I was as part of my like character in who I was. Um, and I think that I've just had a very clear, like I'm not a person that wants to pursue the status quo. I'm also have like this rebellious side of me. So the idea of like working for someone else was always like probably very much against my just I rejected that like pretty clearly. So and I think more than that was just like kind of how my brain, operates and is made up. So like I have a tendency to be able to see things like I feel like ahead of the curve, right? It's sort of like this idea of like, skate where the puck is going, not where it's been idea. And I've just kind of, for some reason, operated in that. And like when we did our organic meal delivery company, like that was probably 10 years too early. Logistics didn't exist and we didn't have Amazon dropping everything off. And so we had drivers delivering organic foods all over the city. And it was just a very different world then. And we did like a whole grain, wood fired pizza concept. And then I did, kind of a farm stand market restaurant based on organics and sustainable food. And then I built a mental health platform for first responders. And like, so like for whatever reason, I think that there's like pursue better. And there's deep meaning behind it. There's like a level of dissatisfaction that, I think I have inside of me that creates this like, I want to do better. I want to, have better. And so I think it has a tendency that it caused me to look like forward and then see like, how do I do that? And then I just have things that resonate with me personally. And then I think that translates into, ideas and concepts, and then the pursuit of those ideas and concepts.
I relate to you a lot where I am that like big picture idea person. How do you know? Because if you're anything like me, you probably have had 1,000 more ideas than the ones that you've actually acted on. How do you know this one is the one that needs to happen?
I think it's like, I think if you're really honest with yourself, right? Like there's a lot of ideas. And I think that there are those that you get sort of you go through the exercise, like creating ideas. Okay, this would be really cool to have. This would be really cool to have. And then when you start to like take an honest evaluation of like some of those, you're like, I don't know. Like it's not really like, it seems cool, seems out of reach, or okay, maybe it's not, I'm not super stoked now on it. The ones that have a tendency to last, I think are a combination of, sustained enthusiasm about those concepts and ideas, probably some gut, like learning to trust your gut and your instincts. And then again, I think it's that ability to kind of like look ahead and see where things are moving. And if all those things combine, then I feel like those are the things that you pursue. And like the NA space, 2018, it wasn't really that big, right? Like there's really nothing kind of going on outside this company called Seedlip that was happening. And, and then they sold like, I think in 2020, but outside of them, there wasn't really much going on. But I think as you like start to like live in a world of wellness, and you're like, okay, well, alcohol doesn't really align with like a healthy, lifestyle, then this has got to change. And so I think if you have the ability to kind of see that, then it's like, okay, well then what does that mean in terms of what one should do, to meet that need down the road? And for me, it just, for whatever reason, it just happened to be more about the experience of socialization, the place, versus just the products, like, having a ready to drink, non-alcoholic cocktail. Like that was never like anything that I wanted to create. It was always about a place or an experience. And I felt that was what people were ultimately gonna migrate towards, because it just seemed logical. Like if you give up alcohol, well, you don't want to give up socializing. So what does that mean? Like where do you go then? And so then trying to figure out how to answer that.
I was just talking to a friend who's been trying to hire someone for 3 months. 3 months! She's been posting on random job boards, scrolling through resumes that make no sense, getting ghosted by candidates. It's a mess. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the very top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it just makes hiring so fast because you're not wasting time on platforms where nobody's actually looking. Your job gets in front of real candidates who are actively searching. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Yeah, I feel like quite often I'll have 1,000 ideas, but then I scan through them and I'm like, which ones can I actually picture myself in? And then I go through those and I'm like, okay, now how do I feel in this vision? And that tends to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
such a light onto, okay, yes. Like
Cool.
I want somebody so badly to create one of those toddler indoor playgrounds in Big Bear. It's enough to where it's come up 100 times. And I'm like, I could
Yeah.
just build that. And then I'm like, I can't see myself doing that. Like, can I see myself even hiring out for it? Maybe, but do I want to? No. I just want to have
Yeah.
a membership there. That's that's what the real thing
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's got to really sustain your ability to actually execute it and get it done. And if you see yourself moving towards that, I've had plenty of ideas that we've kind of like kicked around and started and then just like got rid of because we're like, there's no way we're doing this like full time. But the other ones where you just really believe in it and are so excited that it you see the momentum towards that. Um, that's a good indication that maybe you should continue to pursue it.
So you're a serial entrepreneur. When you have that idea, what are usually your first steps to start actualizing it?
I do a lot of whiteboarding. That for me is like trying to get like the idea of like how to whiteboard or how to get a concept off the ground is really what does that look like? So, for instance, in the first responder mental health business that we built, um, I started like going, well, it should look like this like video and this is before Zoom was really like a big thing. It's like it should kind of look like this video conference platform and it should kind of operate like Slack and basically the concept was a person could drop into a support group based on any topic that they were interested in that was led by some, subject matter expert. And you would be in like basically a peer group with other people getting support that you need in a group environment. And so, like, literally on a whiteboard, I'm drawing, what it looks like and, faces of people and how it would look from a user experience and all that kind of stuff. And so I spent a lot of time just kind of mapping out like the idea and trying to get it out of my brain and onto paper. And then from there, it's really about like, okay, what are like the key like primary first steps? There is some like MVP sort of mentality and approach to building ideas. And I was like, okay, how can we get this off the ground, in the most cost effective, cheapest, quickest way possible, and do that sort of like minimum viable product approach. Yeah, and then we just kind of start mapping out the steps and then you start almost like there's a little bit of a blind squirrel approach sometimes, especially if you don't know an industry or where to start, and you start just kind of navigating your way around. And yeah, and I think sometimes I get lucky and know like I don't know I've uncovered opportunities through like blindly looking for things and then sometimes I've had more direction in terms of like, okay, this is who we need to talk to or this is what we need to do or who we need to ask. But in many cases it was trying to figure things out from basically scratch with our various ideas and concepts.
In case listeners don't know what minimum viable product is, it's basically what is the bare bones thing you could put out there to where it still makes an impact. And this is used a lot in the tech space too, which is a lot of my background. And I love that concept because so often we do have these big pictures. And when we're building it out, it's like more, more, more. That's how I started out. I remember working with a startup with an app and I was like, no, but this app should do this and should do this and should do that. And we'd
Yeah.
get caught up in that. And then it would be forever until we end up launching to where everyone would be tired out or we were trying to build something so complex that we couldn't do any of it with a lot of detail. And so instead it's like, no, what one feature could this work for where people would still want to
Hmm.
download it? And let's do that really, really well. And then let's build on. So what was your minimum viable product for Good Bar?
Yeah, so Good Bar, and we're actually kind of in the middle of a MVP. So Good Bar, what ended up happening with Good Bar was after COVID in the middle of last year, we were kind of winding down the mental health business that we were involved with during COVID. Um, the idea was, okay, let's pick this back up and let's open up these functional bars again. And as we were looking for our first location, we really struggled to find one that resonated with us, that we liked. It was very key for us to find the right location. And out of our impatience, we were like, let's do something. Let's do pop-ups, let's do events. Like, we got to get started. And so we threw up a website that we built on Wix, and we're like, okay, let's do events. We're going to put it out there that we do these non-alcoholic events. And we got hired last year, did our first event like September of last year. And I didn't have any experience in like doing events. And I had hired more or less a kid bartender consultant to like help me learn how to, basically become a bartender. And so he had worked on recipes and kind of showed me equipment and all this kind of stuff. I happened to find a guy who built, mobile bars, and I bought a couple of them. And I rented a van when I needed one. And we get hired for our first event in September. We pick up 2 or 3 more before the end of the year, including a very large pharmaceutical company hired us for a 1,000-person non-alcoholic holiday party that we absolutely crushed. And then we're like, okay, that was fun. That was interesting. Let's get back to the finding a location. And then January, our phones started ringing off the hook, and we've done probably 120 events in the last year. And so for us, we had to kind of like adjust to what we were presented with. And so now we almost have a separate business altogether where, we've got this event business that we're growing, and then the actual brick and mortar is in this sort of MVP phase where it's sort of become refined, excuse me, in terms of what that's going to look like, which is good that we were delayed in that, because I think the idea is now developing in a way that I think is very sustainable and makes a lot of sense. And so our MVP for that for us now is like, okay, if we're not going to find the right exact location, let's start to do, like, for instance, we're targeting January for 2 wellness oriented events, right? Here in Orange County, California is where we're based, where we're going to do 2 events for dry January that are bring together the wellness community in Orange County. And so we want to give people a kind of a taste of what it would feel like and look like to, have Good Bar full time. And so we'll pull together the wellness community, which is like a bunch of studios and fitness clubs and breathwork folks and sound bath people, and have some programming, and, have it's, your non-alcoholic event. And so we want to give people a taste. And so that for us will become a little bit of an MVP. And then we'll continue to look for a location.
What I love about this story is so many times people will have an idea, or they'll be going towards something, and they'll be hit with a roadblock, maybe a couple. And so they look at it like, okay, maybe this isn't meant to happen for me. But there's such power in this open-ended question, like, what if it doesn't mean what I think it does? Then it can be like, well, what if this is creating a necessary slowdown then? What if it's aligning my timing perfectly? And that's kind of how you looked at Good Bar. And I also love how you talked about, you mentioned when I asked about bringing the idea together, you said kind of blindly looking and you'll find opportunities, or you might happen to know somebody who can move it forward. Way back in episode 153, I interviewed a guy named Christian Bush. He wrote a book called The Serendipity Mindset. I also did another episode on luck with Gay Hendricks, but the main message of these is that when we're lucky people aren't just lucky by nature. It's how they navigate the world. It's their willingness to ask themselves open-ended questions, to see an obstacle as maybe something to overcome instead of something to stop them, to sit there and be intentional about like, okay, let me write down everybody that I know that might know something about this, even if it seems far-fetched, and let me just talk to them. Let me be willing to reach out. But instead, so often we sit there and we're like, no, I don't want to reach out until I know this is big, or no, I don't want to bother somebody. And we end up trying to do everything ourselves, which doesn't lead to any of those seemingly really lucky connections. We have to be willing to open ourselves up so that other people can see what we're doing, so that we can ask for help, so that we can be in a place that maybe we'll meet someone.
Yeah, I mean, it's like luck is a, in some ways, we're creating our luck by our pursuit forward. And I think we certainly will not open ourselves to opportunity if we do nothing. And so I think it's a balance between activity that is very, very intentional and just activity in general, as well as, I truly believe in being able to also, step back for a moment and allow things to develop. In the beginning, I think it's a little bit of an exploration, and that's kind of what you're doing is you're exploring this idea and you're exploring this concept, and it's amazingly fun and incredible, and I think if you can open yourself up to being okay with not knowing things, and not concerning yourself with okay, I might look stupid, or I might not know something, or I might kind of fall on my face, and that's okay, and you can get back up, and if you're willing to be able to take that sort of like growth mindset or that learning mindset into this sort of launch or concept development, I think that's how you can navigate your way through it all. But it really is super. It's such an amazing process to go through, and then to see something like come to life because you're willing to sustain through those like awkward periods or those periods where you don't know. And I also think it's helpful to like really know that like a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people are in the same boat, and a lot of people are sort of quote unquote pretending, and and we all kind of feel like we're imposters at times. And if you talk to like real entrepreneurs, like we all seem to go through the same sort of struggles and experiences of insecurity and doubt and questions and feelings of failure and fear and all those things that come up in the process. And I think the difference is that when those time periods come, even though they'll have an impact on you and you'll be affected by it, you continue to move forward, even if it's slowly or if it's just not easy. But definitely ends up being worth the process and the journey and the struggle through it.
When I lived in LA, we had an office in WeWork. And so we were constantly surrounded by other people that were moving towards something big. And I realized even before that, like, I think I was originally inspired by the Smart Passive Income podcast, was something that I listened to a lot with Pat Flynn. He ended up being the one that helped me start a podcast with his first course. And now I consider him a friend of mine. But now I live in Big Bear, and there's not nearly as many entrepreneurs around me. There's just not the same energy and mindset that what I had in LA. So I have to be a lot more intentional. And so I'm constantly reading books and listening to podcasts and making conscious connections, going back to LA to meet up with my entrepreneur friends, to go to events. We talked about how, in the beginning, I was saying yes to everything just in case I might make a connection. Now I'm a lot more selective. And I know how to see like, oh, yes, this one's worth my time. But even then I'll get in a slump and I'm like, okay, let me say yes to a few more things that I wouldn't normally. And then I'll end up meeting somebody. So how do you, well, and I look at this as consciously creating myself, feeding my mind with the messages that I know are going to move me forward. What's your process for that? What are you reading? How do you cultivate those connections? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that this is coming up because this is something that I'm addressing currently in my life. I've got some things that, building is hard enough, right? Building a company is hard enough, right? So there are, as I mentioned before, like the doubts and the fears and the, struggles, and as your bank account's dwindling because you're spending a lot of money on marketing that's not working or whatever, right? Like there's all sorts of issues that come up, in building. Um, and then life happens, right? So you have personal things, you have families, relationships that are challenging and difficult and or that fall apart or whatever, and that impact you, and you got to get up and still show up to build your company. And that's what I'm facing right now. And in that, I have pursued all these things, right? Like I need to fill my mind with all these podcasts, and there's some that are related to improved marketing strategies or how to show up better in a relationship next time or all this stuff, right? And so I've got podcasts going in, I've got YouTube videos going in constantly, I've got audiobooks going in constantly, and in the last week, I've literally had to press pause. And I've had to press pause because at some point, the intention of, trying to get better, if you don't balance that with rest and being okay in the moment and being still, then the underlying message, the paradox of the underlying message is, I'm not good enough. I'm not there yet. I'm failing. And so that's what became very clear to me over the past week, which is like all this stuff that I'm trying to throw into my mind, that I'm trying to improve and I'm trying to get better. If I don't allow myself to be okay with where I'm at the present moment, then I'm just kind of subtly feeding myself this message like, I'm not there yet. I need more. I'm kind of failing. And so it's very interesting. And so I've literally pressed pause in the past week. I'm like, I'm not going to learn anything new right now. I'm not going to try to improve myself or try to get better because, I've been doing a lot of work right now. And right now I just need to be, and I need to be okay. And so that's been the most powerful thing for me over the past week, which is really just like settling in, allowing the universe to like, okay, like do its thing. And without me trying to force everything to happen all the time. And it's kind of helpful to let go. But yes, I have a litany of books. I have a litany of podcasts. I have a litany of YouTube videos that I listen to all the time. And I'm in a period of just allowing myself to be okay right now.
I love that you said that because I go through those cycles intensely, and they oscillate. It's like I'll be so motivated, I'll be in creation mode, and then all of a sudden I'll be in a mode where I'm like, okay, all I want to do is actually sit here and learn. And then I'm like, okay, I need to actually implement this, because I think that's where the big problem is. If you're always learning and you don't leave space to implement, then you're just getting further and further ahead of yourself because you're going deeper and deeper. And I've had times where I've realized I'm using learning as a form of procrastination because it feels productive, but it's an illusion. And so I have to be like, all right, now what am I actually going to do with this? And when I go into those implementation modes, then I'll usually kind of fall into a period where I'm like, okay, now let me just be in this. Let me be proud of myself. And then I'm like, I'll get curious. I'm like, but this book sounds good. And then all of a sudden I realize the cycle is starting over again. I love that you said that, because I think that's a huge trap in the self-development world, where if you don't press pause and you don't say, okay, now what am I going to do with this? Who am I becoming after I understood this? What feels right for me? And what is just another thing that I could chase? Those are all such necessary questions that you have to come back to in that phase.
Yeah, completely. And it does become a form of like anxious avoidance, and I think if you really step back and allow yourself the stillness, then you can kind of fully integrate, you can fully experience, you can fully just kind of be. And I think um, that's something that I've avoided, for a long time. And I've used busyness as a way to avoid that. Um, and I've seen sort of the richness and value of just being, and seeing also like life unfold, which, doing this work that we're doing now is part of life. And and I just like I need to allow my personal stuff to allow to my life to unfold, I need my business to unfold. So there's no real separation. And I think if you can integrate, just being into all that you do, then I think life is not only richer, I think we also end up down the path that we ought to end up.
I wonder if you noticed this connection. You said you pressed pause about a week ago, and that's about when fall weather started, and fall is associated with harvesting the fruits of your labor. And men tend to go, and if they're in tune with themselves or with nature, more in the cycles of the seasons. Whereas for me, I tend to go more with my 28-day cycle. They're
Yeah.
quick. I'm in and out in 28 days, and then I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talked
I
about
don't
how you
know.
started an organic meal delivery service, and you said it was like 10 years
Yeah.
too early. So
Yeah.
tell me about that. What was it like? The too early makes it sound like it didn't turn out how you planned. So I want to know how you handled that.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, I was really young. I don't know if 25, I was maybe 25 or 26. I don't know if that's really young, but um it was my first business period. And that started in 2004. And so the idea was like we kind of like what Freshly does or Blue Apron does, right? These companies that provide, ready to eat meals and they're delivered to you. I think now those are delivered literally by Amazon or some other logistics service that drops them off at your doorstep. We didn't have that luxury in 2004, nor did we have sort of the web platform to order, and it was just all very very manual, everything that we were doing, and so we had these insulated delivery bags made, and we had a driver that would come pick up food at midnight and then drive all over Los Angeles and like a milkman, drop off food and pick up old bags and do all this stuff, right? And it was very tedious, and we could work till 3 or 4 in the morning because we were in our mid 20s, and it was great. And I think it was a little early, partly because I was still trying to figure things out. And I think what um, caused us to fail was me saying yes to everything. Like that was one of the factors. So, for instance, what that looked like for us was we were building in Los Angeles, but then someone in Riverside County was like, "Hey, we want your service." And so we'd be like, "Yes." Or in Orange County, we'd be like, "Yes." Or San Diego County, we'd say yes. And that really started to um, not be very sustainable. And so because we were doing all the work and we didn't have the luxury of, you know, logistics, for instance, they could carry out and deliver for us. We got spread way too thin, and eventually, a couple of years later, just we were done and tired. So yeah, so for us, we had to really just whether it was something we wanted to continue to do, if we had the bandwidth to do it, did we have the financial resources to continue to do it? So it became like a very practical decision. And also, like, at that time I was growing a family, and we were having more kids, and and I had a wife at that time that was looking at me like, our savings account is dwindling pretty heavy, and she was great at supporting and having faith that we were going to make it. And at some point, it was just like, okay, this needs to be a practical decision, and sometimes you just have to cross that bridge. And and be realistic about what needs to happen.
What did you discover about yourself in the moment that maybe you were considering this business was failing?
I think, well, I think it's now how I look back at it, which, lesson for me then would have been not to personalize the success or failure of the business with me as an individual. And I think I took it pretty personally. And so for a number of years, rather than try to work on, a new idea or a new concept, I went out and got a job and worked for someone else. And frankly, I spent a lot of time doing things that I wasn't very excited about. So had I known that that's just kind of part of the deal, right? Like this happens and it's a normal thing that happens. Businesses fail all the time. Entrepreneurs succeed and they fail, but they get back up and try something new. Then I think I would have had less of a personal reaction in association with, my own personal failure with the business's failure.
Yeah, I can't even look at something as a failure. Like I have to reframe it as a pivot because there's things that you learned about it
Mm.
and there's things that are even feeding what you're doing today. And I think I got that from my old, I kind of consider my toxic boss. It was wild working for him, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what not to do in dealing with people, and I learned a lot about what to do when working toward a vision. And his second company I worked with him on, it was like we started as something, this didn't work. Okay, what do we learn? Let's pivot, let's pivot, let's pivot. And now he's working on a business that's still working. It was his fourth pivot from the original idea, had to completely redo a new app, lots of new team members because that was the part that I feel like he should probably bring somebody outside to help him work with. But which,
Yeah, totally.
speaking of, when do you bring in other people to move your vision towards you? And what's your process towards that? When do you bring in other people to move your vision towards you? And what's your process towards that?
Well, it used to be like never. Like, I mean, at least not for a while. And now I feel like it's as early as possible because one of the things that I realize is I know what I'm good at this point. And where I used to try to wear every hat, now I have like no interest in wearing those hats. And, a lot of times that comes depending on how you do it. Maybe it means you give up some equity or you try to find like a partner or something like that. Um, Now it's just being very realistic about what my limitations are and where I would normally be like, yeah, but I don't want to pay for this or I don't want to do that. I realize that that mindset of, you know, say spending money on hiring somebody or whatever, because I'm trying to save money really costs me money at the end of the day. So rather than looking at people and resources as an expense, now I'm looking at it as an investment. That's a mind shift for me with Good Bar, right? Like I've had to like shift that with Good Bar. And yeah, I don't want to do everything anymore. Now I want to bring in better people that know more than I do. It is, I think, one of the biggest challenges still is finding really solid, good people that you can rely on and depend upon, especially in a startup environment, because there is a way of operating in a startup that's different than working for a company that has, 1,500 employees and all the, systems and processes in place and the bureaucracy and levels. And, it's just like when you're in startup mode, you're just grinding to get stuff done and you're pivoting all the time and you're trying new things and testing new things and things don't work. And so you have to have a little level of being okay with instability and risk and then finding someone that also has the requisite skill set. That's challenging.
How do you do that? Especially because I found my biggest thing is I have very high standards because of who I am. And so there's been times where
Sure.
I hire in people or uh, with both mine and my husband's business where I'm just like, I don't understand why you haven't read 4 books this season on how to get better at your
Mm,
job, and it's
yeah.
sort of unrealistic and I've really learned a lot from my husband and how he hires, but being okay, some people are the specialists and they'll be really good at their little section. Other people can be the big dreamers with me that can see the overview. But what's your process to finding the right people who align with your vision and possibly your expectations for them in doing so?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's still a work in process. The what I found is I'm not great at it. And I think because I have like that vision, perspective where I have friends that are more operationally minded and they have a whole process for identifying and finding good people. Um, so I've gone through a couple different ways of trying to find the right people. Um, and I think the last sort of round of interviews we had for like a partnership manager was the first interview involved personal questions like, tell me about what you do in the morning, tell me what books are you reading, like, are you a cultural fit for what we are doing, are you comfortable in a startup environment, are you comfortable um, with what we do here and the risk associated with that. And then from there, once you kind of feel like you've got people that are on board, then it's really going through sort of the technical questions of the job and asking them like, well, tell us about your sales process and which CRMs have you used and all that kind of stuff. But I find it's really challenging for me personally, because I have sort of that mentality of if we hire you and you're part of the team, I'm very much a hands-off person with, I don't want to micromanage anybody. And I have expectations that y- you'll put in the work and you'll be qualified to do the work without a lot of oversight from me. And what I've found is that that's not really great in most circumstances, and that people need guidance, people need training, you know, regardless of how qualified they are, because nobody is in your head. Nobody has the vision that you do. Nobody realistically cares as much as you do, as the founder. And so my job then is to inspire people to move forward towards the vision. And that's something that I'm getting better at.
Yeah, that is a work in progress for, I mean, both all the businesses we run over in my household. It's something that we're working on now and getting to the point of realizing that even when it seems like your employee failed, as the business owner, you have to take accountability. Like, what went wrong there? Who, like, if they were just a total utter failure, why did I hire them? What went wrong in that process?
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's like, okay, what process did I not document? What vision did I not really put out there so that they could align with it? What went wrong and how can I do better to where this mishap doesn't happen? And so often it's really about those processes, unless you're hiring somebody that's like top dollar, where it's like, okay, I actually need you to come in and develop my marketing plan for me.
Completely. Completely. Yeah. There's levels to it, right? And the hard part is, if you're not a gifted marketer, but you're hiring for a marketing role, how do you even vet someone out in that role, right? That's tough. And you need someone that is a high level marketer person to be able to make those decisions, right? For whatever role it is. So that is just like a constant challenge. And I don't know if I've just racked it up to having to kiss a lot of frogs, but it's sort of that way. And so now it's like, okay, I hire a lot slower, but I fire faster. Um, because if it's not working and then you got to be able to move on from it.
I think that's something I picked up in the book Rework by the author created the uh, task platform Basecamp, but I learned that was one of my
Mm,
first like business books like 15 years ago,
yeah, it's a good one.
whenever it came out.
Yeah,
Yeah, hire
yeah,
slow and fire fast, and it gives you time to really understand like who somebody is, not just what their resume says, because a resume can be super flowery, but do they live and breathe what they speak? And I
yeah.
would love to find people that are like me, but I also know that there's some really amazing people that are just better at like nose down getting their work done and might not be reading all the
Hmm.
books that I'm reading and the podcasts that I'm
Yeah.
in. And it's a balance of the two, because if you have all visionaries, then it's going to be
Yeah.
hard to really execute and implement all the things that come up. So how do you see your vision, your bigger vision with Good Bar? How do you kind of go back and forth between like what is Daryl's ideal life? What impact legacy does he want to leave? And then at this point where you are with your what you're creating without getting caught up in the gap of like, I'm not there yet.
Yeah. The big vision now as it comes together, it's now it was very personal when I first started. And now it's even more personal because Good Bar is a place that I desperately need for myself, and my life. So motivated by that to just create the very thing that I want and believe that other people need and want. And so that's what I think we have to do. I think as entrepreneurs, we have to create the things that we think other people need, and if it's personal to us, then it becomes very mission oriented. And so we're developing what it I think will look like in when we open, and so yeah, I've just been really hungry to have it for myself, and I feel like it's necessary almost for my soul at this point to launch Good Bar, at least from our brick and mortar, you know, locations. But yeah, yeah, very excited about about what we have coming up. I think the delays, as we talked about earlier, have helped us to really frame out what we're doing and why we're doing it more than if we had jumped into this in 2018 or even last year. And and so the timing is going to work out great.
If you were to leave listeners with one thing to focus on, whether it's an action item or a thought, for those people that have this idea and they just don't really know how to make it real, what would you leave them with?
I think it's just take a chance and move forward, even if you don't know. You know, do what you can. Take the steps, uh, even if you don't know what they are. There are small steps that you can move towards. Um, what you think uh, you want to build, um, and then be flexible that might change over time. So don't get hung up on how it has to look right now, today, as if it were 5 or 10 years down the road. Take a step forward to do something, and then be open to see how it develops, as you get inputs, as the universe acts on it, as get feedback, and then just be flexible. Be very, very flexible. I love the idea of be like water, right? So be like water and adjust as all those inputs present themselves, but just continue to move forward.
So important. I'm always sharing with people that whatever choice you make, you're creating a self-belief. And you don't need to up and quit your job to make progress on an idea. You could spend a half hour each night doing what you do know, which could be, the first step could be brainstorming. It could be internet searches. It could be sitting there writing down everyone you know who's created something that you can reach out to. There's so many first steps that you can take without knowing anything else about how to bring them to life. But like I said, you're creating a self-belief either way. You're either creating a belief that you can't trust yourself and you're the one person you should be able to count on the most because you keep talking yourself out of your ideas. You're just doubting your every move and saying, oh, no, no, no. If you can't trust yourself, if you are doubting yourself, how are you going to bring other people into your vision? And progress is a key part of happiness. So just taking those little steps and having a Google Doc where you're actually starting to write things down, compile information, you're going to feel better about yourself than if you sit there and do nothing. So it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it in our minds. So thank you so much for sharing your story and laying out how you got to where you are and just your evolving vision. For people that want to learn more about Good Bar, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can check us on our socials. All our socials are at Drink Good Bar and our website, drinkgoodbar.com. And before I leave, I think you bring up a really amazing point. And I think more importantly than what I said before, I think it's important to know that things take way longer than you think they should. And if you ask any entrepreneur that is a quote unquote overnight success, it's something they've been working on for 10 years. So don't get caught up in not being where you're at right now today, and just trust that it will come over time, and it takes way longer than you think. And we're all working towards something, and that's taking a long time for all of us. So you can move forward, just knowing that there isn't a timeline where you're supposed to be somewhere at this moment.
All the links from this episode will be at mindlove.com/380. Your challenge for this week is to take just one idea that's been living in your head, just one, and get it out onto paper. I don't care if it's messy. I don't care if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. The goal isn't to create a perfect business plan. It's to start building that muscle of taking action. So break it down into the smallest possible first steps. And you know what? I know taking action can feel impossible when you don't know exactly what to do. Sometimes your first step is just brainstorming or finding a path that's already been laid out for you. And so if your big goal is your own transformation, is to become the person who actually can create your biggest dreams, then I have been pouring my heart into something just for you. It's Living Mind Love. It's finally launching next week. So if you've been wanting to make real changes in your life, but you keep getting stuck, you're going to want to get on the wait list now, because I'm offering a special founding member price that honestly is kind of ridiculous. We're talking about my most affordable program ever, and it's packed with enough transformation to guide you through an entire year. And I've designed it so that you're making changes that are so easy, you barely notice you're making them, all while understanding the why behind each step, so your brain can lock in these changes for good. You also get access to an exclusive Mind Love community. So this is your chance to join at the best price this program will ever be offered at. So just head to mindlove.com/waitlist. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.